The mahogany door to Thomas Green's study burst open as Miranda Lopez rushed in, her hands trembling as she held a single sheet of paper. Thomas's face went pale, his jaw literally dropping as he stared at what she had just translated. This can't be right," he whispered, his voice barely audible in the opulent room lined with first-edition books worth more than most people's homes. But what happened next shocked everyone who witnessed it. Let me take you back to where this incredible story began. Just 12 hours earlier on what seemed like an ordinary Tuesday morning at the Green estate in Beverly Hills. Miranda pressed the brass doorbell at exactly 7 a.m., just as she had every weekday for the past 3 years. The sprawling mansion before her still took her breath away sometimes. 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, and grounds that stretched further than her entire childhood neighborhood in East LA. She adjusted her worn canvas bag on her shoulder, the one that held her cleaning supplies and the secrets Thomas Green would never imagine. "Morning, Miranda," called James, the groundskeeper, as she made her way up the marble steps. "Mr. Green's already in his office. Seems agitated about something." Miranda nodded, her English still carrying the soft accent of her grandmother's Spanish lullabies. She had learned long ago that being invisible was safer in houses like this. Rich people talked freely around the help, as if they were furniture with ears that couldn't understand the weight of their words. Little did Thomas know that Miranda understood far more than he could ever imagine. She began her routine in the kitchen, wiping down surfaces that gleamed like mirrors, when the sound of Thomas's voice echoed from his office. Sharp, frustrated, and growing louder by the minute. "Lisa, I don't care what the Seoul office says. That contract is worth $12 million, and I'm not losing it because their translator can't handle basic business Korean." Miranda's hands stilled on the granite countertop. Korean. She had spent 2 years studying it at the community college, part of her dream that felt more impossible with each passing day. Thomas's footsteps thundered across the hardwood floor as he emerged from his office, his silver hair disheveled and his usually perfect tie askew. At 58, Thomas Green commanded respect in every boardroom in Los Angeles, but right now he looked like a man watching his empire crumble. "Miranda," he barked, barely glancing at her as he poured himself a coffee with shaking hands. "I don't suppose you know anything about Korean, do you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Miranda felt her heart race, but she kept her eyes down, continuing to clean. "A little, sir. I have been studying." Thomas let out a bitter laugh that echoed off the vaulted ceilings. "Studying? Right. Well, here's the thing. I've got a document that could save or sink my biggest deal, and 3 professional translators have given me 3 different versions of what it means. The meeting is in 4 hours, and I'm basically flying blind into Seoul with a $12 million question mark." He walked over to where Miranda was working, his expensive cologne mixing with the scent of lemon cleaning spray. For the first time in 3 years, he really looked at her. Not through her, but at her. "Tell you what, Miranda. I'm feeling generous today, maybe a little desperate too." His voice carried that particular tone of wealthy men who thought they were being magnanimous. "Here's the deal of the century for you. You translate this document correctly, and I mean correctly, not some community college guess, and I'll give you my entire year's salary. Every penny." Miranda's breath caught in her throat. Thomas Green made $7 million a year. She knew because she had accidentally seen his tax documents while cleaning his desk last month. "But when you can't do it," Thomas continued, his laughter growing more condescending, "when you realize this isn't some beginner Korean textbook exercise, I want you to remember that there are levels to this world. Some of us are meant to make the big decisions, and some of us are meant to clean up after them. This decision would change everything." Miranda set down her cleaning cloth and looked Thomas directly in the eyes for the first time since she had started working for him. "Show me the document, Mr. Green." The confidence in her voice surprised them both. Thomas's eyebrows raised, but he was already walking toward his office, gesturing for her to follow. "This should be entertaining. Lisa," he called to his financial advisor who was hunched over a laptop in the corner. "Come witness this. Miranda here thinks she can save our Seoul deal." Lisa Bennett looked up from her screen, her sharp green eyes assessing Miranda with an expression that seemed almost hopeful. But the real shock was still coming. As they entered Thomas's office, Miranda saw the document spread across his desk. Dense Korean text mixed with technical business terminology that would challenge even native speakers. But as her eyes scanned the page, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Absolute certainty. Miranda picked up the paper, her hands steady now, and began to read. Thomas crossed his arms, that same condescending smile playing on his lips, ready to prove his point about knowing one's place in the world. He had no idea he was about to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. The morning sun cast long shadows across Thomas's marble foyer as Miranda stood there, still processing what had just happened. The weight of his challenge hung heavy in the air between them, and she could see the smug satisfaction dancing in his eyes. Well, Thomas crossed his arms, his expensive watch catching the light. Cat got your tongue? Or are you finally realizing you bit off more than you can chew? Miranda's fingers tightened around her cleaning supplies. Something flickered across her face. Not defeat, but determination. I accept, she said quietly, her accent barely noticeable despite Thomas's earlier mockery. What Thomas didn't know, what no one in that house knew, was that Miranda Lopez carried secrets behind her unassuming exterior. Every evening after her long days scrubbing floors and polishing silverware, she returned to a small apartment across town where the walls told a completely different story. Her modest living room was lined with dictionaries in 7 languages. Stacks of translation certificates lay hidden in a drawer, each one representing years of night school and weekend classes. While Thomas saw only a maid, Miranda had been quietly building a bridge between worlds, one word at a time. But there was someone else watching this unfold with keen interest. Lisa Bennett, Thomas's sharp-eyed financial advisor, had witnessed the entire exchange from the doorway of his office. Unlike Thomas, she recognized something in Miranda's posture, the way her eyes lit up at the mention of ancient languages. Interesting choice of challenge, Lisa murmured to herself, her fingers already reaching for her phone. She had her own reasons for paying attention, reasons that went beyond simple curiosity. As Miranda gathered her things to leave, Thomas called after her. Oh, and Miranda? Don't bother Googling your way through this. I'll know if you cheat. Real translation requires understanding, not just copying words. Miranda paused at the door. Mr. Green, she said, her voice steady. Some of us learned languages the hard way, by needing them to survive. The door closed behind her with a soft click. But if you think Miranda's surprising confidence caught Thomas off guard, wait until you hear what Lisa discovered that very afternoon. While Thomas lounged by his pool, dismissing the whole thing as entertainment, Lisa was making phone calls. What she found would change everything about how they both saw their quiet housekeeper. Lisa's research revealed that Miranda Lopez wasn't just any immigrant trying to make ends meet. 3 years ago, she had been the lead translator for a major international law firm, until budget cuts forced her into domestic work to support her ailing mother. The irony was almost poetic. Thomas had unknowingly hired one of the city's most skilled linguists to clean his toilets. But here's where things get really interesting. Lisa had been watching Thomas's business dealings closely, and she knew something he didn't yet realize. That ancient document he was so confident about? It wasn't just some academic exercise. It was connected to a multimillion-dollar contract with a European consortium, one that had been stalling for months due to translation disputes. Late that evening, Miranda sat at her small kitchen table, surrounded by her reference books. The document Thomas had given her lay before her, and as she studied the archaic script, her expression grew more serious. This wasn't just old Latin mixed with medieval vernacular. It was a legal document with implications that could devastate or save a business empire. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Be careful with that translation. More people are watching than you know. A friend. Miranda stared at the message, her heart racing. Who could have gotten her number? And what did they know about the challenge that she didn't? The next morning, Thomas strutted into his office with his usual confidence. But Lisa was waiting for him with a manila folder and an expression he'd never seen before. "Thomas," she said, her voice unusually grave. "We need to talk about Miranda Lopez. And more importantly, we need to talk about what you've just handed her." The weight of Thomas's words hangs heavy in the air as Miranda stares at the document he's placed before her. Her hands tremble slightly as she reaches for it, but something in Thomas's expression stops her cold. For the first time since she's known him, doubt flickers across his face. "You know what, Miranda?" Thomas says, running his hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Maybe I was hasty. This document, it's more important than I initially thought." Lisa Bennett leans forward from her position near the mahogany bookshelf, her eyes sharp with interest. "Thomas, you can't back out now. You made the challenge public in front of the entire staff downstairs." Miranda's heart pounds as she processes what's happening. The man who laughed at her just hours ago is now second-guessing himself. She glances down at the document again, recognizing the letterhead of Yamamoto Industries, Thomas's biggest potential client. "Sir," Miranda says quietly, her voice steady despite her nerves. "If you've changed your mind about the challenge, I understand." But as soon as the words leave her mouth, Thomas's competitive nature flares back to life. "Changed my mind? Absolutely not. I don't back down from anything." He straightens his tie with sharp, aggressive movements. "I'm just saying this particular document is worth more than my annual salary to translate correctly." What Thomas doesn't realize is that Miranda has been watching him work on this deal for weeks. Every coffee she's brought him, every late night she's cleaned his office while he paced and made phone calls. She's absorbed pieces of the puzzle. The Yamamoto contract isn't just another business deal. It's Thomas's lifeline. Lisa clears her throat, drawing both their attention. "Miranda, before you proceed, I feel obligated to mention something." Her voice carries an odd weight that makes the air in the room feel thick. Thomas received word this morning that his current contract with Morrison Electronics has been terminated due to a translation error in their agreement. The color drains from Thomas's face. "Lisa, that's not relevant to..." "Isn't it, though?" Lisa interrupts, her gaze fixed on Miranda. "The error was in a Japanese clause that got mistranslated by their professional service. Cost them $3 million. Miranda's eyes widen as the implications hit her. If Thomas loses the Yamamoto deal too, especially due to another translation error, his company could face serious financial trouble. The man who casually offered his salary as a prize is suddenly playing for much higher stakes than anyone realized. "Miranda," Thomas says, his voice softer now, almost pleading, "are you absolutely certain about this? Because if you get this wrong..." The vulnerability in his voice catches Miranda off guard. This isn't the arrogant millionaire who laughed at her this morning. This is a man whose empire might crumble on the accuracy of her translation skills. Miranda thinks about her daughter Sophia, asleep in their tiny apartment, dreaming of the college education Miranda can barely afford. She thinks about the language books she studies by candlelight when the electricity gets cut off. She thinks about every night she's stayed up late, perfecting her translation work for clients who pay her a fraction of what they'd pay a certified service. "Mr. Green," she says, looking him directly in the eyes. "I've been translating documents professionally for over 5 years. Not for fun, not as a hobby, but because my family depends on it." Thomas blinks in surprise. "What are you talking about?" "Every evening after I finish here, I go home and translate legal documents, medical records, business contracts. I've built a reputation in the immigrant community for accuracy." Miranda's voice grows stronger with each word. "The challenge you offered me this morning? It's not impossible. It's Tuesday." Lisa can't hide her smile as she watches Thomas's worldview shift in real time. The woman he saw as just another employee has been running a successful side business that he never bothered to notice. But just as Miranda reaches for the document again, her phone buzzes with an urgent text message. She glances at it and her face goes pale. "Is everything all right?" Thomas asks, genuine concern replacing his earlier dismissiveness. Miranda stares at her phone, then at the document, then back at her phone. The text is from her regular client, Mrs. Chen, offering her a rush translation job that pays exactly what she needs for Sophia's school tuition this semester. The deadline is tonight. The room falls silent as Miranda realizes she's facing an impossible choice. Take Thomas's challenge and potentially win more money than she's ever seen, but risk losing the guaranteed payment she desperately needs. Or walk away from the challenge that could change her life forever to secure her daughter's future. Thomas watches her internal struggle, and for the first time in years, he finds himself genuinely worried about someone else's well-being. Miranda, whatever that text says, we can work something out. But Miranda knows that's not how the world works for people like her. Rich men make promises they forget, while rent is due every month without exception. She looks up at Thomas, her decision crystallizing with terrifying clarity, and says the words that make his blood run cold. The morning sun barely breaks through the conference room windows when Thomas finds himself facing the most important meeting of his year. Across the mahogany table sits Hiroshi Tanaka, CEO of Japan's largest tech conglomerate, along with his team of executives. This deal could net Thomas's company $50 million, but there's one problem that's making his palms sweat. Mr. Green, Hiroshi says in accented English. We have concerns about the contract specifications. Our legal team in Tokyo has identified several discrepancies in the translation. Thomas forces a confident smile, but inside he's panicking. The original contract was translated by his usual firm, and now everything hinges on getting this right. I assure you, Mr. Tanaka, any issues can be resolved quickly. Unfortunately, Hiroshi continues, sliding a document across the table. This particular clause seems to have been mistranslated. It changes the entire liability structure. Until we can verify the correct interpretation, we cannot proceed. Thomas stares at the Japanese characters swimming before his eyes like indecipherable hieroglyphs. His usual translator is in Europe, and every minute of delay costs him money. The irony isn't lost on him. Just yesterday he was mocking Miranda about translation work, and now his empire hangs in the balance over the very same skill. We will need to postpone, Hiroshi announces, beginning to gather his papers. Wait, Thomas says, his voice cracking slightly. Give me 1 hour. I'll have this resolved. As the Japanese delegation files out, Thomas slumps in his chair, his head in his hands. That's when the memory hits him like a freight train. He's suddenly 17 again, watching his father's construction business collapse because of a miscommunication with their biggest contractor. His father had been too proud to ask for help, too stubborn to admit he didn't understand the technical specifications. Thomas swore he'd never make the same mistake. But here he is, decades later, potentially losing everything because of his pride. Lisa Bennett, his financial advisor, enters the room looking grim. Thomas, I need to tell you something. That contract with Tanaka? It's not just about the $50 million. Our investors are watching this deal closely. If it falls through, they're threatening to pull out of 3 other major projects. Thomas feels the blood drain from his face. How much are we talking about? 200 million minimum. Maybe more. Lisa pauses, studying his expression. There's something else. I did some research on your housekeeper, Miranda Lopez. What about her? She's not just a cleaning lady, Thomas. She runs a small translation service from her apartment. Specializes in business documents. Her clients include several Fortune 500 companies, though they probably don't know they're working with someone who cleans houses during the day. Thomas stares at her in disbelief. You're telling me that Miranda, my Miranda, is a professional translator? One of the best in the city from what I can tell. Her reviews are glowing. Clients specifically praise her accuracy with complex business terminology. Lisa leans forward. Thomas, there's more. Remember the community center you donated to last year? The one in the Latino district. Vaguely. Miranda's family was displaced when their apartment building was sold to developers. Your donation helped them find temporary housing. She probably doesn't know you were involved, but she's been working 3 jobs ever since, including yours, to support her elderly mother and younger brother. The weight of this revelation crashes over Thomas. All those mornings when Miranda arrived with tired eyes, all those times she politely declined his offers of leftover food, all those moments when he barely acknowledged her presence. She was carrying a burden he never bothered to see. His phone buzzes with a text from Hiroshi. Mr. Green, we must have resolution by 2 p.m. or we fly back to Tokyo tonight. Thomas looks at his watch. It's already noon. His hands shake as he picks up his phone and calls Miranda. Hello, Mr. Green? Is everything okay at the house? Miranda, I need you to come to my downtown office immediately. It's urgent. Sir, I'm at my other job right now. I'll pay you double, triple. Just please, can you be here in 30 minutes? There's a pause. Is this about yesterday? About the challenge? Thomas closes his eyes, remembering his cruel laughter, his dismissive attitude. Miranda, I think I may have made the biggest mistake of my life. And right now, you might be the only person who can save me from losing everything. The document trembles in Miranda's hands as she spreads it across Thomas's mahogany desk. The international contract that could save his business empire lies before her, dense with legal terminology and technical specifications in 3 different languages. Thomas stands behind her, his usual arrogance replaced by desperate hope, while Lisa Bennett watches from the corner, her tablet ready to document whatever unfolds. Miranda's eyes scan the pages with laser focus, her finger tracing each line as she absorbs the content. The room falls silent except for the ticking of an antique grandfather clock. Thomas shifts nervously, realizing for the first time in years that his fate rests entirely in someone else's hands. Here, Miranda says quietly, pointing to a section buried deep in the technical specifications. This is where everything went wrong. She looks up at Thomas, her voice gaining strength. Your previous translator missed a critical detail. The client isn't rejecting your proposal because of pricing. They're rejecting it because of a mistranslation about delivery timelines. In Mandarin, the phrase your translator used means whenever convenient, instead of by the specified deadline. Thomas's eyes widen as Miranda continues, her expertise flowing naturally. But there's more. In the Arabic portion, your team translated exclusive partnership as limited contract. The client thinks you're offering them a temporary deal when they want a permanent business relationship. Lisa steps forward, her respect for Miranda evident. How did you catch what 3 professional services missed? Miranda's smile carries years of quiet confidence. Because I didn't just translate the words. I understood the culture behind them. I've worked with families from these regions, learned their business customs, their values. Translation isn't just about language. It's about understanding what people truly mean. She turns back to Thomas, holding his gaze steadily. Your client wants partnership, respect, and reliability. They want to know you understand their culture enough to be trusted with their business. Thomas sinks into his leather chair, the weight of realization hitting him. I've been treating translation like a technical task instead of relationship building. Exactly, Miranda nods. And there's something else. The contract includes a clause about cultural liaison services. If you can provide someone who understands both languages and cultures, they're willing to increase the deal value by 40%. The room electric with possibility as Miranda pulls out her phone and begins typing. I'm drafting a response that addresses their concerns and proposes a cultural partnership approach. But Mr. Green, this can't just be about saving this deal. If you want to succeed internationally, you need to change how you think about communication entirely. Thomas watches in amazement as Miranda effortlessly crafts responses in 3 languages, each perfectly adapted to its cultural context. Her fingers fly across her phone screen with the confidence of someone who's found her calling. Miranda, Thomas says softly, his voice catching slightly, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you a complete transformation of how I do business. 2 weeks later, the offices of Green International have a different energy entirely. Miranda sits in a spacious corner office, the nameplate reading Miranda Lopez, Director of International Cultural Relations. Through her window, She can see Thomas in a meeting with potential clients, gesturing enthusiastically as he explains their new culturally integrated approach. Her phone buzzes with notifications from the language services company she's launched as a side venture, backed by Thomas's investment and recommendation. The irony isn't lost on her. The man who once laughed at her potential has become her biggest advocate. Thomas appears in her doorway holding a thick folder. The Singapore deal came through. They specifically requested you handle all future communications. He pauses, a genuine smile crossing his face. They said they've never worked with an American company that truly understood their perspective. Miranda leans back in her chair, thinking of her grandmother who cleaned houses but spoke 5 languages, who always told her that understanding others was the greatest gift she could develop. You know what the real translation was? She asks Thomas. What do you mean? Your challenge wasn't just about translating words. It was about translating assumptions. About recognizing that potential doesn't always come in the package we expect. Thomas nods slowly. I've learned that respect isn't something you can buy with money. It's something you earn by seeing value in others. As Thomas leaves, Miranda turns back to her computer, where emails await from clients around the world who've heard about the maid who transformed a millionaire's business. But she smiles knowing the truth. She didn't change Thomas's business. She simply showed him that success comes from understanding and respecting the people around you. The real payoff wasn't the salary she earned or the company she built. It was proving that when you truly listen to others and recognize their worth, everyone wins. What assumptions are you making about the people in your own life? Share your thoughts below, and remember, sometimes the most extraordinary transformations begin with the simplest act of respect.